First film that I watched as part of Sundance this year, and I think it set a pretty high standard for everything else to come. So congratulations on that, Tia and Emma. I just want to know about the genesis of the project, how you decided you wanted to focus on the Janes, how you decided you want to do it together.
I guess I usually take this question because I have a family connection to the film. So it's sort of been lore in my family long before I was around even. And so my brother, Daniel Arcana, who's a producer on the film and in his own right, started thinking about this project, around 2018, if you know what I mean. The country started shifting in a direction, he got concerned. And so he started talking to Judith about developing the project, and he came to me. And I've been a longtime producer on documentaries. I was very busy working on a couple of films for Susan Lacey for HBO, and thought I wouldn't, that I would produce this. And that was the extent of it, even though it felt very personal. So I reached out to Tia, who I have, a tremendous admiration for as a filmmaker and a person and an activist. And she was excited. She can speak for herself on this, but she seemed very excited right away by the prospect of it. And HBO gave us some development money very early on. They saw, I think, the power of this project, and our, fierce collaborators and wonderful partners. And so we got through that development stage, and it became clear to me what maybe I already knew somewhere deep down, which is that I wanted to direct. And so Tia and I decided to do it together, which it was a circuitous route, but it was exactly right. It landed us in the exact right place to do this together. I've said this before, but it's like this sort of like lovely, moment of sisterhood. That's the foundation of telling a story about all of this sisterhood. So it feels like it all came together beautifully.
Yeah, I would say in the spirit of the Janes, the sisterhood has grown and continues. And I have, I just thought this was an extraordinary story, just an extraordinary dramatic story. And I think that's what you have to start with, in any film, fiction or nonfiction. It's all about the story. And there was nothing, it was just so dramatic and so powerful and so compelling. I was also very, I felt very personally, committed to the issue. So that helps to have that kind of passion, and, all the things fell in place. So we were thrilled to be able to take this on, and, all throughout the making of the film, there were various milestones, in terms of, losing the Supreme Court majority, losing Justice Ginsburg. We just felt, a renewed urgency, to make sure that this story gets out before we lost Roe v. Wade altogether.
I mean, we're so lucky that we have two Janes here, Heather and Diane. But one thing that I love about the film is that you have such an interesting cross-section of talking heads. Like when I tell people, oh, one of the cops that busted them is in this, people are like, oh, wow, you don't normally see that. So I'm so interested in how you decided who you wanted to be a talking head, who you wanted to be a subject, how you went about finding them, what kind of balance you wanted to strike, because I think you see it there. And I think that's a good question for Tia and Emma. And probably, I'm sure Daniel has some insight too about that sort of process. So Daniel wanted to start.
One thing I could definitely speak to is, because of the family connection, as Emma said, that sort of gave me license to reach out to all of the Janes initially and get perhaps a slightly warmer response, because they're constantly inundated with requests and have been for decades. And I think quite often they say no to a lot of those requests. But fortunately, because of the family connection, we were able to reach a lot of them and bring them, into the tent. And that has been immeasurably valuable. And they opened up to us in really special ways, and they allowed us to use their personal archival collections So that's something that I was quite instrumental in bringing to the film.
You know, we knew right off the bat that we wanted to stay very close to the story, and we really wanted to draw on firsthand accounts. You know, we really, you know, we talked to experts to inform, you know, the story, but we didn't put them on camera. We really wanted, you know, the audience to experience the immediacy and, you know, also sort of get to know these extraordinary women. You know, as for Ted O'Connor, the Chicago homicide detective, you know, he, we like a good villain. He's not a villain, but, you know, he appeared in a number of places in our film. He was one of the, with the National Guard at the Democratic National Convention in 1968, and he told us quite a bit about his experience there. So he was on the other side of the Janes. And then most pointedly, you know, he was one of the Chicago policemen who arrested the women in 1972.
I mean, the only thing I would add to it is that we just had this incredible, you know, the sort of like looming character in the film is Chicago. And so we had this opportunity to have people from all sides, you know, the good actors, the bad actors, whatever you want to call them, you know, speak about what it was like. And the result of that, I think, is this very visceral experience that really puts you there at that time in this historic moment, telling this historic female story, which is so unique. So, you know, so I think we just wanted sort of a well-rounded perspective of pulling it in so that you can really have a 360 view of what was going on at that time.
For Heather and Diane, Danielle said something that I suspected, which is that you've been inundated over the decades with requests. And so I wondered what it was about these filmmakers and this idea that made you, first of all, say, yes, I want to do this. And what other projects in the past did you say no to, or why did you say no to something? If you don't have to be specific, but just, you know, what was different about this one that made you say, yes, this is the right one? Heather, do you want to start?
Well, having just seen the film, I think it is spectacular. I didn't make the film, so I'm not, I'm just recognizing the talent, the commitment, the sensitivity, the insight that Tia, Emma, and Daniel provided. So I'm so glad that they agreed to tell this story, and I was glad to be included. For me, my life has been in organizing, and the main lesson I take from the film, and I hope people will take, is that if you want to change the world, you need to organize. And so my response to Daniel, who was the first person who contacted me, was because he saw it as a film to impact the real world events, that this was part of the ongoing movement to build people's confidence that if we organize, we can change the world, and we need to. And right now, we really need to. It also, by the way, was such a joy to see some of the Janes, some of whom I never had met, and some of whom I haven't seen in so many years, and some of whom have died since. And then, I don't know if you want to get to this later, but I had never seen Mike. I only dealt with Mike by phone when we were setting up the service originally. Anyway, so many of the things I found eye-opening, and I think the audience will find really revelations.
Well, I want to say I totally agree with everything Heather said, especially with seeing people. I've never met Heather, you know, so here we are, we're meeting each other. And so many of the things really blew me away, and especially Mike, the way he looks now, the way he used to look, that was great. He was almost like comic relief. I love the movie. But I'm so glad you asked this, because this is what I really wanted to talk about was, you know, I would get these requests too, and I ignored all of them because it didn't interest me. That was something I did back then, and my life had moved on. I had children, I worked in healthcare. I was busy. I didn't want to talk about it. It didn't interest me to talk about those things. It just didn't. So then I moved to North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, and I saw the kind of harassment women were undergoing trying to get health care, trying to get an abortion. I saw a man who would, in his pickup truck, bring a ladder with him so he could prop it against a 6-foot fence, stand on top of the fence, and harass people in the parking lot of a clinic. And he would say nasty things. He would tell the people that they were entering the gates of hell and there would be no redemption for them. So I joined a group here, the Reproductive Rights Coalition, and I began working with them and defending the clinics here. So I see stuff like that every time. And these anti-abortion sellouts are nasty people. They say they're religious, but they are just nasty and personally nasty, not only to the women and men, their companions, the people going into the clinics, but also to us, and they try to look for any little weak areas and pick at people. It's horrible. I'm just so glad. So that made me want to participate in the movie because this is happening and we still have Roe and it's not enough. That's not enough. So I came to this movie because I wanted to let people know what we did and that what can be done.
Well, it's funny that we're speaking on a pretty auspicious day. It's the 49th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. To be honest, it doesn't feel like we're going to get to 50, but I wondered how each of you were feeling about that and thinking about it and processing it and what you want to maybe do next. Diane?
I don't know. I want to continue doing what I'm doing. I'm kind of old now. I'm 73 years old. I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm certified in family. I started thinking, well, should I go back for another certification and be certified in women's health so that I could prescribe the pills? Would that be useful? I'm hoping that we help inspire people to do what's necessary, whether it's legal or illegal. And I really take heart from some of the things that are going on, like the group of women in Mexico. I felt so humbled reading about them, that women in Mexico want to help women in the United States. Like, what have we done for Mexicans lately? It's horrible the way it is. So I felt so humbled by them, by the woman in the boat, the doctor that prescribes pills. I don't know. Heather, what do you plan to do?
I think right now we are on a knife's edge. And on the one hand, we have this glorious movement that did elect a president, a Congress, a Senate, and was a movement that inspired the country and much of the world. And that movement still is there. On the other hand, we're on a knife's edge and there's a pushback on almost everything we fought for that makes us a better country over the last 50 years, including Roe, but even democracy, investing in people's lives, in having truth and honesty that you can trust from official sources. And so because I think we're at such a treacherous point, I think it's very important both that people see this film, are inspired by it, just as Diane says, and then there are so many ways to be active. There's legal activity, there's legislative activity, there is providing additional services, financial aid, housing, transportation for those women who need it. But there also is the organizing, the taking action, the showing up when the demonstrations are called. And then there's the 2022 election. So much is riding on that. And I hope people will decide now not to be dispirited, but to be involved. And I think the great message out of this film is that even when it seemed pretty hopeless, you can change the world, but only if you're involved, only if you take action. So thank you to the filmmakers for spreading that word, giving people some hope we can make that change.
Tia and Emma, I mean, you both said that, and along with Daniel, you wanted to do this because you could see how, changes were coming down and things were shifting. And a lot of things happened while you were making the film. How are you two feeling on what is a celebratory day, but might be the last one?
I feel proud that we're contributing, there's a million things you can do. And we, for Tia and myself, we're filmmakers. So this is how we can spend our professional time trying to help push things forward. That doesn't mean that we can't do other things as well. And, we certainly plan to. I feel proud of being aligned with a group of women that did something pretty profound the last time around. I feel proud of having arms locked with them in this piece of filmmaking or art or whatever you want to call it. And I feel very concerned for the women in the United States and the generations to come. And, having been so steeped in all of these stories for the last couple of years, stories that made it into the film and stories that didn't make it into the film. I feel like Tia and I really have it sort of flowing through our veins. We're really, really conscious of what it seemed to feel like, and the terror and the fear and the vulnerability and the loneliness and all and the horrible choices that women are forced to make when backed into this corner. So I think I'm just really feeling that, and the possibility that that's going to be women's future in this country is a very terrifying thing to be so conscious of.
I mean, I would add to that. I think it's actually women's present in this country right now. I mean, since 73, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of restrictions placed on abortion access and abortion care, in a state level, on the federal level. And that's disproportionately affected poor women, rural women, Black and brown communities. I mean, it's wrong. It's wrong, and people have been harmed. So I don't think we have to use a lot of imagination to know what it's going to look like if the Supreme Court continues to whittle away at Roe v. Wade or actually overturn it. We know what it looks like now. We know what it looked like before 1973. In the film, we show, that in 1970, New York decriminalized abortion. And so what happened was, women from the Midwest and all over the East Coast came to New York City, to get abortions, but they're not, because when abortion is not legal, that doesn't mean women don't have abortions. It just means that they have to, go to some effort to find abortion care. And in this case, in Chicago, women with means traveled to New York City, by plane, by car. They could take off time from work if they worked. They could find childcare, if they had children. But so many women were left, who couldn't do that, who couldn't afford that, who didn't have the access or didn't even know where to find that care. And that's who the Janes served so profoundly. That situation is happening right now. It's happening all over the country. It's happening in Texas. Women in Texas are going to New Mexico. Women in New Mexico are going to California because there are not enough abortion clinics. And this is not just about abortion care. It's about a whole spectrum of reproductive rights and justice. So I think nobody has to wait until the Supreme Court takes action to be engaged with this issue. We can be engaged right now because it's happening all around us, and it's going to get worse.
So I thought maybe we could have a slightly lighter question where we can all go around and say if there was a film lately that has impacted us in a meaningful way, as I think the Janes will, and if there's something that springs to mind that had an impact on you and why, and think of it as a chance to recommend something a little softer. If it's something softer, it doesn't have to be. Daniel, do you have something?
Gosh, I can't think of it.
I'm sorry, mine's not softer.
Okay, you know what?
And it's not even really necessarily, it's not even new, to be honest. I'm working on another project right now, and as part of the research for that, I've watched Alex Gibney's Agents of Chaos several times because it's quite, there's a correlation between that and the new project that I'm helping to develop. And that has had a pretty profound impact on me. It was educational, but it was also frightening. And I don't know, there's a lot of interconnection between even our story and that story to some extent. In any case, that's mine. It's great. It's fantastic. I recommend it, but it's not lighter and it's not.
I'll give you a lighter one. I mean, Don't Look Up. it's a comedy, it's a satire, it's gotten into the zeitgeist. It's quite sobering, and actually Neil deGrasse Tyson joked that it was a documentary, that because it's really it's a cautionary tale about climate change and denial. And so anyhow, Adam McKay has this extraordinary, record of getting things into the zeitgeist and getting people engaged and talking. Because once they start talking, that's the beginning of something, of taking action.
Partly, there's so many films that really have inspired me. Film is such a powerful vehicle because it can be intimate. When it rings true, it's emotional, it's gripping. You can see it, you can feel it, even taste it. So, three that are right now. One is on PBS is going to show a movie I just saw about Fannie Lou Hamer, and it's coming up actually. I think the first showing is on PBS today, and then it will also be on World Channel. And Fannie Lou, and it's relevant to this film because she was a great heroine of the civil rights movement. And the first doctor that we found to first perform the procedures before there was a whole Jane operation was Dr. T.R.M. Howard, who was a great civil rights leader from Mississippi, where Fannie Lou Hamer was from, who came to Chicago when his name was on a Klan death list. So the civil rights movement and the women's movement are intimately tied together in many ways. A second film is a film I just saw on Barbara Lee, the congresswoman from California. And what a remarkable freedom fighter she has been her whole life. And she also has a story about her having an abortion and the steps she had to take. And the third is I just saw last night, Call Jane. And while it's a fictionalized story, and they took artistic license, the two films combined, because of the great visibility that film will have, I think it's a powerful duo. And the documentary now providing the true story of what happened. It's interesting to pair them together.
They make for a fantastic double feature. And it's just like, because they're both at Sundance, you can watch one and think, oh, I want to know more. I can watch the other one. I think that's fantastic.
Well, I would love to follow Heather's beautiful, profound list of films with what I've been doing, which is making this film that feels so important and so big and so, all encompassing and all of that. And then watching the pettiest thing I possibly can, which is Curb Your Enthusiasm. You gotta balance it out in life, So when we're wrestling with these big things, it feels good to come home and be petty with Larry David.
Well, I think that's all we have time for. This was such a pleasure. It was such an honor. The film is wonderful. I think it's going to impact a lot of people. I think I hope it'll change a lot of minds and hearts because we need that now. And I thank you so much for sharing with me your stories and joining us for this. And I hope next time I see any of you, it can be in person. That would be lovely.
We hope so too. Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you for giving us this time and this platform.